say good afternoon and good evening to everybody, since we don't know what time zone everybody's in. As I do this presentation, as always, you're welcome to post questions into the chat so that you don't forget. However, I will wait until the end of the presentation to answer questions, especially because I can't really see what the questions are until I stop presenting. Oh, Sinetta, am I saying that right? You're in the UK. Awesome. Well, good evening. I hope it's been a lovely day in the UK. We are having some really nice weather. I'm in Canada. Oh, 11 a.m. So you're in the West Coast, Catherine. Awesome. Well, we're having some really nice weather. We've had a very crazy June. It was 42 degrees last Tuesday, and now it's a very pleasant 23 degrees. So it's much more pleasant here now than it was a week ago, which is kind of crazy weather for June here, but you never know what you're going to get. So I'm going to jump right into this recording because, like I said, a lot of people register even if they can't make it just to get the recording after. So I'm going to jump right into the presentation. Rainy and windy and only 15. Oh, that's too bad. I know the UK can kind of be precarious with the weather, kind of like the west coast of Canada. You just never know if you're going to get warm, sunny weather or cool weather. In Ireland, my family was there as we have a lot of business in Ireland, and they were laughing because apparently it was like a 22-degree day and all of everybody in Ireland were talking about what a hot day it was. And I mean, 22 degrees is very nice, but to us Canadians who experience really humid weather in the summer, like I said, sometimes it can get like 42 is kind of warm, but like, 35, 38 degrees here sometimes. 22 is certainly not hot. Sunny California. Oh, nice, Catherine. We were just talking about the Golden Coast this morning. I have yet to travel that coast, but everybody says it has to be on my bucket list. My in-laws have never made me promise anything, but they've made me promise to someday take that trip with their son, my husband, in order to enjoy that trip, the Golden Coast, because everybody says it's so nice. What city are you actually in, Catherine? I see we have a lot of others joining. Thank you so much for joining. I always love it when we get some participants, even though, like I said, I know a lot of people join in order to get the recording, but it's always nice to know that I'm talking to live people just north of San Francisco. Awesome. Well, I'll have to do that sometime, and I'll bring Lene with me because I know she would absolutely love to meet you, as she's always had enjoyed the conversations or the emails that she's had with you. And I don't even know if Lene has been to LA, but anyway, we would love to come and visit. And for anybody in the UK and Ireland, we're hoping to do a trip there next year as well, now that COVID restrictions and travel has kind of gotten a little less crazy. So hopefully we can manage that sometime. I'm a traveler at heart. I love traveling. So, and anywhere to travel to, I'm happy to do. Okay, so I'm going to jump into this presentation. And again, if you have any questions, you can throw them in the chat, but I will address them after the presentation. So I am just going to start the presentation and share my screen. Give me 1 second. I have multiple screens, so I'm always hoping for the best when I share the right screen. So I think that's correct. Everyone can see the screen that says bone health. I'm assuming if for some reason you can't, please somebody tell me in the chat. So today we're going to talk about bone health, and I'm really excited to talk about this topic because I really enjoy educating people on bone health because it's a big problem in our countries, in the world, and it's a very misunderstood problem. Unfortunately, it's very misunderstood what we actually need for strong bones and the amounts of certain nutrients that we need. So bone health can be very complicated. There's a lot to understand about how both about how bones work and how different nutrients interact in the system to make up proper bones and bone matrix and bone health. So in this webinar, we're going to discuss how and why bone health recommendations may have contained misinformation or may contain misinformation, as well as some tips and nutrients to strengthen your bones. So a couple stats about bone health. In Europe and the United States, 30% of women are osteoporotic, and it's estimated that 40% of postmenopausal women and 30% of men will experience an osteoporotic fracture. So that's a pretty high stat for both women and men, because a lot of people tend to think that bone issues are primarily affecting women. And it's true that menopause does affect our bones with our estrogen decline. However, it is a big problem for men as well. It's estimated that 18.3% of the global population has osteoporosis. So that's a significant amount of people struggling with the same issue. And when you consider osteoporosis, 18.3% of the global population, that's not even including people who just have low bone density. Obviously osteoporosis, you do have low bone density, but some people are just diagnosed with low bone density and do not have osteoporosis yet. So this is a really big problem in the world, and especially in North America and Europe. So there's something called the calcium paradox. The calcium paradox is when we do not have enough calcium in our skeleton, but we have too much calcium in our soft tissues. This leads to two major health issues, which are osteoporosis and heart disease. So in 2010, a study found that women who took calcium supplements had a 30% higher risk of cardiovascular disease, which is very significant. More research studies began to show that calcium supplements might raise the risk for heart disease, and calcium supplements could be connected with accelerated deposits of calcium in the blood vessel walls and soft tissues. So in case you're not familiar with what that might mean, if you have deposits of calcium in your blood vessel walls and soft tissues, it can lead to atherosclerosis because the calcium is building up in your arteries, cataracts, calcium in your eyes, bone spurs, kidney stones. It's all calcium building up in your body. And we want to make sure, again, that calcium is getting to our skeleton. So why would we have enough calcium, too much calcium in our body and not enough in our skeleton? So this information, these studies, combined with further studies that show that countries that have a greater intake of dairy products do not have a lower rate of osteoporosis and bone fracture, it suggests that calcium supplements may not be the solution that we thought they were. So again, countries with a greater intake of dairy products, which we're told our whole lives is calcium, they don't have a lower rate of osteoporosis or hip fracture. Of course, calcium is important. We know that calcium is essential for bone health, and we know that 99% of calcium in our body is found in our bones and teeth. So calcium is important, but obviously there's some missing pieces to the puzzle. It's not all about calcium. So what are these missing pieces? So first of all, calcium and magnesium work together for many processes in the body. Some of them, but not limited to, are regulating heartbeat, muscle tone and contraction, and nerve conduction. And magnesium also plays a role in the transport of calcium ions across the cell membrane. So magnesium and calcium are dependent on each other for absorption and excretion. So you need these two together. Now, it was said that we should take magnesium and calcium in a specific ratio. So the ratio that everybody was told they needed was 2-to-1. 2 parts calcium to 1 part magnesium. So this ratio, and this can get a little bit confusing, so you will get a recording of this afterwards. If you have any questions, let me know and I can clarify, or you can re-watch these sections. So this ratio was first suggested by a French researcher named Jean Durlach. And unfortunately, his recommendations were widely misunderstood, which led to a lot of problems. So he suggested that one's calcium intake from all sources, that included food and water and supplements, should not exceed one's total magnesium intake by more than 2 parts calcium to 1 part magnesium by weight. So that sounds simple enough. However, many people would take this information and think that it meant that they had to supplement in this range, that they needed, if they took a supplement, they needed the supplement to be 2 parts calcium to 1 part magnesium. This was a problem because many people failed to realize that they were actually getting a lot of calcium in their diets and not getting that much magnesium. So naturally in our diet, we're going to get more calcium than magnesium. It also wasn't clear to a lot of people that this was his recommendation of the maximum ratio, not the minimum ratio. So people were getting too much calcium and not enough magnesium. Magnesium is easily depleted in food, and it's not abundant in our food supply, but calcium is. Our body will also recycle calcium for later use because of its bone regeneration, but in contrast, unused magnesium is flushed out of the system. So for these reasons, calcium's total availability to our body is much greater than magnesium's total availability. And because of this, many people were exceeding this recommended maximum of 2-to-1. So therefore, they were getting too much calcium. Not only were they getting too much calcium, but they were also getting it in the wrong ratio. But we also have a problem where people were getting too much calcium. So our bones need to regenerate themselves every 10 years or so, depending on our age. So bone density can drop when bone breakdown outpaces bone formation. So your breakdown is going faster than your bone formation. So of course your bone density can drop. So some scientists reasoned that increasing calcium levels could preserve the women's bones, especially in a postmenopausal state. So in the 1970s, a few small and short studies were done to prove this hypothesis. Showed that increasing calcium intake actually increased bone density slightly. However, these studies were very short and they did not use a long time. And calcium levels should be observed for much longer than a couple weeks that these studies did. So based on these studies, the RDA for calcium was increased from 800 milligrams to 1200 milligrams for women over 50. So again, this recommendation was based on studies that weren't really done for long enough, and there wasn't really sufficient evidence to show that consuming more calcium will prevent fractures. So there is a difference between having good bone density and your susceptibility to fractures. So just because you might have slightly better bone density doesn't mean that you won't fracture as easily. So later a study done involving 18,000 women showed that the calcium D combo did slightly increase the density of their bones, but it didn't prevent fracture. So that's really important to note because this recommendation of more calcium has stuck despite the fact that these studies have done proving that calcium and vitamin D don't prevent fracture. So what good is, having slightly stronger bone density if we're not preventing any fracture? So as we will continue to learn in this webinar, this is because bones need more than just two nutrients. Calcium and vitamin D are really important players in the bones, but bones definitely need more than just two nutrients. So first problem, the wrong ratio. Second problem, too much calcium. Those problems go together. Now, the other problem was that people were not taking the proper cofactors alongside their calcium. So first, vitamin D entered. Health professionals began to realize, yes, you need vitamin D with calcium in order for strong bones. And this is because vitamin D can help calcium absorb into the body. So it helps if you're eating calcium and then vitamin D, you'll get more calcium into your body because the vitamin D helps with absorption. So this was a step in the right direction because of course, if you're calcium deficient or if you have a calcium issue, you definitely need that vitamin D to get into your body. However, vitamin D doesn't prevent calcium buildup in the soft tissues. Vitamin D doesn't direct calcium to the bones, and it can even make the situation in the soft tissues worse because it's causing the body to absorb more calcium. But if you don't have the right nutrients to get it into the bones, well, then it's going to go into the soft tissues. So this is why we really need a nutrient called K2. So one key factor in bone health and also, a really important factor in the potential for calcium to cause poor heart health is vitamin K2. Most people have heard of vitamin K1. So vitamin K1 is used in blood clotting, and it's very difficult to become deficient in K1 because the body recycles K1 for later use. And it's very obvious when we're deficient in K1 because we have issues with blood clotting. But K2 deficiency, on the other hand, is not detected easily, and it's very easy to become deficient. Researchers for a long time didn't realize there was a difference between K1 and K2. They just thought it was a vitamin K. But over the years, they've realized that vitamin K1 and K2 are very different and have very different functions. So K2 activates two proteins. K1 doesn't do this. K2 activates two proteins. One is osteocalcin, which directs calcium into the bones and teeth. So when we have calcium from our diet, when we have calcium from our supplements, we need to make sure that the nutrients we are taking alongside it are putting it in the bones and teeth and not into the soft tissues. So that's one thing that vitamin K2 does is gets calcium into the right place in the body. The other thing that it does is it escorts calcium out of the soft tissues. So if you've been supplementing with calcium for a long time, or you think that you may have been focusing on getting too much calcium in your foods and not the right cofactors, then K2 also helps take that calcification out of the soft tissues of your body. So again, your arteries, any joints, bone spurs, cataracts, kidney stones. K2 can help kind of clear that out of your body because you don't want calcium buildup in your body. Now, a couple important notes about vitamin K2. Vitamin K2 is not easy to get in our diet. It used to be easier years ago because K2 is primarily found in fermentation and fermented products. So a couple of scenarios where you would find K2. There is a Japanese fermented soybean product called natto. Most people don't enjoy the taste of natto. It's a very acquired taste. It's fermented soybeans. It's extremely high in vitamin K2, and a lot of vitamin K2 supplements will use the K2 extracted from that natto. Vitamin K2 is also high in certain cheeses like Gouda and Brie because it is the fermentation process. So these cheeses are naturally fermented, and that's what makes them, the milk into cheese. And this fermentation product makes them higher in K2. Vitamin K2 is also high in certain animal products if they are fed properly. So grass-fed dairy. If you're eating grass-fed butter, if you're eating grass-fed beef, it's high in K2 as long as that animal ate grass its whole life and was finished on grass. And this is because when that animal eats grass, when the cow eats grass, the grass ferments in its stomach and K2 is produced. So a lot of our food supply does not offer us grass-fed beef anymore because all of the cows are in barns. And a lot of us don't focus on a lot of fermented foods anymore. Years ago they had to ferment foods for preservation. If you're not fussy on the taste of fermented foods, then you likely don't eat a lot of them. It's really interesting to note the French diet because they have a lot of cheese in their diet, and they have things like foie gras, which is the fatty goose liver, that's actually very high in vitamin K2 because of the fermentation that happens. You will read that our bodies, our own bacteria should make K2, and this is true, but it's not nearly enough for what we need. So if we have a healthy flora a healthy amount of probiotics in our digestive system, it should make some K2, but compared to what we would get in our diet or supplements, it's not nearly enough for the needs that our body has. So K2 is extremely important for clearing out those arteries of calcium buildup that might lead to atherosclerosis. And K2 is also extremely important for the heart in general. If you joined our webinar on the heart, you would have heard some great information about magnesium and vitamin K2 and how vital they are for heart health. This is one reason why K2 is vital for the heart, but it goes beyond just keeping the arteries clear. So another really important note about vitamin K2 is that when you get it in supplementary form, if it's not the right form, it will degrade and isn't worth paying for. So vitamin K2, when you mix it with magnesium or calcium or other organic alkaline substances, it will break down. And in fact, as you can see by this graph, the amount of K2 found in most supplements that contain substances like calcium and magnesium won't match label claim within 1 month. So it will have already degraded enough that it can't make that label claim of how much it's telling you it will give. And if you look at this graph again, this 1% over here, that's within a year. So if your supplement has been manufactured a year ago and it's not the right form of K2 and it's mixed with calcium or magnesium, it will be basically non-existent in the supplement. So in order to avoid this, you need a double microencapsulated K2. So this form stays largely intact until it's activated in water or obviously in your stomach juices. And it's far more costly, so not every supplement company uses it. But again, your K2 will be basically non-existent, or it won't be enough if you don't use it. So all of our formulas use this, and you need to make sure that if you're going to get a bone formula that mixes some of these substances, it's not worth buying if it doesn't have this high quality form of K2. So as you can see by this beautiful infographic, the nutrients that work together for proper bone health are extremely complex. So although magnesium, calcium, and vitamins D and K2 seem to be the main players, there are also more side players. So we know that calcium is necessary, as most of the calcium in our body is found in our bones and teeth. We learn that vitamin D helps the body to absorb calcium from the intestinal tract, and then vitamin K2 helps direct the calcium into the bones and teeth. So this is a very important relationship between the three of them. Researchers definitely were on the right track when they talked about how we need calcium and vitamin D, but K2 is often a missing link, and there are a few more missing links. So I'd like to talk about a few more nutrients that we find to be important that we put in our bone formula and why they are important for the bones. So of course, we are a magnesium-based supplement company. We know that magnesium is needed for 80% of enzymatic processes in the body, and some of these relate to bone health. So as we already mentioned, magnesium helps with calcium ion transport. So you need magnesium to get that calcium into the body. Magnesium is also essential for vitamin D absorption and utilization in the body. So if you don't have magnesium, then you don't have vitamin D. And if you don't have vitamin D, then it's hard for your body to absorb calcium. So you can see why we need all of these together. Magnesium also works to stimulate a hormone called calcitonin. And this hormone is needed to draw calcium out of the blood and soft tissues and put it back into the bones. So that's one of the things that K2 does also with that matrix GLA protein, removes it out of the soft tissues. So magnesium will help draw calcium out of the blood and the soft tissues and make sure it's going into the bones. So, then it can help promote the healthy bone structure while also preventing calcium buildup in arteries and organs. So that in that way, K2 and magnesium work really nicely together because you're stimulating that hormone and you're stimulating that matrix GLA protein. So then we have vitamin C. Vitamin C is essential for collagen synthesis and bone matrix quality. We have zinc, which is required for normal skeletal growth, bone homeostasis, and it's a factor in the promotion of bone regeneration. Bone regeneration is when our bones regenerate themselves every 10 years, like we had mentioned before. Boron will play a role in calcium metabolism, bone formation, and in the function of steroid hormones, all of which are extremely important for bone health. Potassium reduces calcium loss from the bones, and it reduces urinary calcium excretion. So potassium helps keep calcium in the body. And B6 may help also promote osteocalcin and facilitates cellular uptake of magnesium. So you want the B6 to help you get the magnesium, which then helps the calcium ion transport and stimulates that calcitonin to make sure that the calcium is going into the right spots. So you can see how bone health is much more than just straight calcium or just calcium and vitamin D. There are a lot of nutrients at play. These ones that I mentioned are only some of them. It's not necessarily every single nutrient, but according to our research, these are the ones that are the most important and the most likely to be deficient in people. So we created our Mag 365 BF, which stands for bone formula. So we have two versions of this bone formula. The pink one does not have calcium and the blue one does have calcium. A lot of people don't actually need extra calcium, as we've talked about today, because it is quite abundant in their diets. But a lot of people are just lacking the cofactors to make sure that that calcium from their diets or calcium that they might get from other supplements or multivitamins go to the right place. So a lot of people really like to take the pink tub just to know that, they're able to keep their soft tissues clear of calcium, keep their bones strong, and help direct that calcium into the bones and teeth. But if you are concerned about your calcium levels or you have absorption issues, then the blue tub is the tub with calcium. Exact same formula as this, it just also has calcium. This also contains a 3-part magnesium to 2 parts calcium ratio. So we avoided that 2-to-1 misunderstood ratio. And according to our research, when you factor in magnesium loss from the body and ability to get magnesium and calcium from food, the 2-to-1 ratio was no good, but the 3-to-2 magnesium to calcium ratio was more in line with that maximum recommendation by the French researcher. So as you can see, this product did win Best Women's Product. A lot of women love it, especially in postmenopause, as they're struggling to keep their bones strong. And it also offers benefits for hormone health, heart health, and immune health. So it's a really nice all-around supplement because of the nutrients in it. A lot of women find relief with hot flashes, with sleep, with moods, and then the bonus is that it's also helping to strengthen their bones. So for those that prefer capsules, we offer Prismag and Prismag Plus. For the bone health, you would want the Prismag Plus, which is the white one. It only contains magnesium, K2, and D3. It doesn't have all of those other goodies. It's kind of our version of BF in a capsule, but we couldn't fit everything. We couldn't fit all those nutrients into a capsule with making it really big. So my recommendation would always be the powdered formula for this. But if you need a capsule, or if you're on the go or you can't do the powder, then the Prismag Plus is a good alternative. And just a reminder that our company only focuses on well-absorbed magnesium, and that we always use that double micro encapsulated K2 that you need in order to have your K2 actually stay intact by the time you're taking it. So a couple of other tips for bone health. So it's very common knowledge that exercise is important. So why is this? It's because it reduces the rate of bone loss. It conserves bone tissue, which lowers the rate of fracture. So that's part of the missing piece of the puzzle, is you really want to conserve that bone tissue so that you can lower that rate of fracture. It's not only about bone density, it's about keeping that rate of fracture down. You can also strengthen the core with exercise, which will reduce your risk of falling. As we get older, we tend to lose our balance easier, and falls can be fatal to people as they age. So if you stay strong with exercise, you have more strength and more core strength to keep that balance. Another obvious tip, but it goes without saying, is a healthy diet. So quality proteins, moderate alcohol use, fresh fruits and vegetables. You know, the healthier you are, the better your weight is, the easier you will have to be healthy and to be able to, again, stay strong to reduce your risk of falling. So a summary on what we've talked about. So bones need more nutrients than just calcium. Taking too much calcium can harm the body. Calcium, magnesium, K2 and D are essential nutrients for the bones. Like, those are the must-haves, but there are also, as we talked about, other key players that are important to have. And quality is important when supplementing for bones, because again, if you're not getting the right form of magnesium, if you're not getting the right form of K2, then you may not be absorbing them at all. And then there's really no point in taking them, as you will not strengthen your bones if you're not getting those nutrients. So as always, we want to thank you for joining us. You can enjoy 30% off our products for the next week with code BH30. Would love to see anybody that hasn't tried our bone formula to try it. It's a really excellent formula. We have reviews, people talking about how it has helped their bone scan increase, it's helped their bone density, and that their doctor has been happy with their results. I know in Ireland especially, it's very common for the general practitioners to prescribe a calcium tablet. So if your doctor has you on a calcium tablet, that pink tub is a must, to make sure that that calcium is going into the bones and not going into the soft tissues. If you'd like a copy of the presentation or any of the references used, you can see on the bottom of the slides that I reference everything. We research everything on the journals. You can definitely email us at info@itlhealth.com if you want to read some of these scientific studies yourself. So I'm just going to stop my screen sharing and open up the floor if there are any questions. I will say too that we had in particular one customer whose doctor was very, very skeptical, but he had her on calcium and she just said, I'm gonna take this one, the pink tub. And she saw such improvements that she helped her doctor become a believer in some of these holistic or alternative nutrients. So that was really encouraging to see. So I just want to thank everybody again for coming. And again, if you have any questions, you can throw it in chat. I hope that I didn't throw too much information at you or confuse anybody, as I know some of these concepts are a little bit hard to figure out, especially when you're first hearing it and when you're first trying to understand what the issues are. I see somebody typing something in the chat, so I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes. Oh, thank you, Catherine. You're always so encouraging after my talks, and I really appreciate your feedback. There's also a great book if anybody wants to learn more. It's called Vitamin K2 and the Calcium Paradox, and it has a ton of great information on bone health, specifically on why K2 is so important for the body. Talks mostly about why it's important for the bones, but it also gets into why it's important for the heart. You know, the whole process of how the scientists discovered this nutrient and where we can find it in food and everything. It's a really excellent read. It's not too difficult. It's not too scientific. It's by Kate Room. If you need, actually, I'll type it in here in case anybody's interested in reading more. Vitamin K2 and the Calcium Paradox. Citrate. Let me make sure I spell her name right. It's a really good read. It was really eye-opening. And if you, for some reason, lose the name of the book, or if you need anything, you can always catch us at info@itlhealth.com. You can always use the contact us form on our website as well. And just a reminder about the code BH30, so Bone Health 30. And if you want to try any of the supplements we've talked about or try any of our other supplements, then you can get 30% off as the thank you for your time in joining us. So I thought I saw somebody else typing a question, but I don't see it popping up. So I am going to end this meeting. If you think of a question afterwards, don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a great day or evening, depending on where you're located.